He's like, if you notice this or that, or the coloration is this, there's something more inside. So when at first blush, you look at this big pile of gray rocks and you're like, yep, everything's all the same. Just smash one. No. Things appear to be the same, but just like life, everything has its own little nuances, right? Some people have harvested more on the inside than others, and it shows. So in the cracks and the imperfections are where you find the diamonds. So much to digest, right? I mean, I just wanted to dig for diamonds. So we spend some time smashing rocks with minimal success. I mean, there were a couple, but like you really had to be patient and you had to like look for the right one. And then you had to be cautious as you were unwrapping it. So there's been this thing on my bucket list for a very long time. Right. And I mean, I live in New York State. There's absolutely no reason why I'm as old as I am and haven't done it yet. And you've been a part of conversations where we've talked about it, right? So there are quarries in the Mohawk Valley, Herkimer, New York, that have what are called Herkimer diamonds. They have great clarity. They're beautiful. They're not diamonds in the way that we think of diamonds, but they are certainly New York State's version of diamonds. So I kept saying, I'm going to the Herkimer diamond mines. I'm going to go dig for I'm going to go mine for diamonds. I'm going to go mine for diamonds. For 20 years, I've said I was going to go mine for diamonds, to have not mined for diamonds until this week. So do you know how hard it is to mine for diamonds?
No clue.
No clue. Well, I mean, I guess I didn't either, although I should have known when they were like, pack a sledgehammer, pack a shovel, and I'm like, okay. So I packed a sledgehammer and a shovel and a couple of hammers and, some digging tools. But wow. So there's 3 different ways. One, you have to move large rocks to get underneath the large rocks to see if any of the diamonds have slipped out while other people were smashing large rocks. 2, you have to smash large rocks that are really, really super hard. Or 3, you have to dig in the dirt below the crust to get into the soft dirt, right? So we're talking about like waist high dig, not ankle high dig. So, my friend and I show up there and we're like, yep, we're going to dig down. We're going to come home with diamonds. How cool, how lucky, So we go in and we pay our $14. And then you have access to whatever. You can rent a sifter because you got to sift if you're digging in the dirt. So she says there's sluting, which is sifting. And then the rock pile is here. There's 2 more rock piles up higher, whatever you want to do. It's open game. Whatever you find, you take with you. She said there is a guy named Bill who's been out there for the whole month of October, but he's very friendly. So like, if you wanted to dig in the dirt, feel free to go ahead over. Everybody here is very friendly. Okay, fine. So now we walk out and we're like, okay, what do we do? Newbies, right? Rookies, never really, I did bring gloves. I wasn't gonna, and I cut my nails, so I didn't break nails, but whatever. So we decided wisely that we needed some guidance. So if Bill's been here for 27 days, right, then he's going to have, and not only he's been here for 27 days, he's probably been here 27 years, 27 days, right? So he's going to have some insight. So we went over, we introduced ourselves. He was lovely. He offered us some of his dirt to start sifting so that we could kind of get the bug, you know what I mean? Because if you're frustrated at something that you do the first time, you may not go back. But if you have a little help and you meet with a little success, then that gives you, kind of that incentive to continue. So we're using Bill's dirt, nice, soft, beautiful Mother Earth dirt, and we're finding diamonds and, cool, like this big, and you're like, oh my gosh, and this imperfect, and so what, and then in the meanwhile, it's like all these other things are showing up, and you're like, oh my gosh, do we keep these too? Or are we only here for diamonds? What's our purpose? Is it diamonds
Mm.
only? How are we going to feel when we go home if we didn't bring some of the other little treasures home too? Maybe it's not just about diamonds. Maybe it's about some of the other stuff that you find along the way. Do you see where this is all going, Amaryllis? Like life lessons, no matter what it is you're doing. No matter what it is you're doing. So I'm digging for diamonds, but I'm not going to discard the other little treasures that I find along the way. So we use Bill's dirt, and then we decide we're going to dig our own. And we go over there and we're like, oh, wait, there's this guy over here, Charles from Canada, who owns a rock shop, and he's smashing rocks. So let's go have a conversation with Charles about smashing rocks and see what we can learn about that method, right? About smashing rocks. So we have these two little hammers. I mean, they're big hammers, but they're, in retrospect, they're little hammers. And we have this big old sledgehammer, which was not going to be functional. So we were using our little hammers, and he was helping us, and he was showing us how to see what's inside by looking at the outside. He's like, if you notice this or that, or the coloration is this, there's something more inside, right? So when at first blush you look at this big pile of gray rocks and you're like, yep, everything's all the same. Just smash one. No, no, no. Things appear to be the same, but just like life, everything has its own little nuances, right? Some people have harvested more on the inside than others, and it shows. And it shows. So in the cracks and the imperfections are where you find the diamonds. So much to digest, right? I mean, I just wanted to dig for diamonds. I just wanted to find Herkimer diamonds, right? I didn't know I was going to have a whole day of like, so we spend some time smashing rocks with minimal success. I mean, there were a couple, but like you really had to be patient, and you had to like look for the right one, and then you had to be cautious as you were, unwrapping it.
Yeah. So before we continue, Susan, I'm just going to introduce ourselves and welcome everyone who is joining us today. We are Authentic Conversations, and we get together. We don't have a schedule, guys, because that's life sometimes. But thank you for those that follow us. Usually every week there is an episode up on our podcast or YouTube. And I am Amareli. And
I'm Susan. And yeah.
Susan, so how hard was it to break a rock, first of all? How much work was this? And so I love the fact that you have to even choose a rock to determine, I can
Examine it.
only imagine how
Yeah.
how fast you can get frustrated of how hard it is to break a rock, and then be like, if I have to do this 10 times or even 5 times, this
Yeah.
is no longer fun.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it was sweat worthy. You know what I mean? You were breaking a sweat, and we really had to be very deliberate in the size of rocks that we chose, because we had to go for the smaller, thinner, smaller, thinner versions of the best possible scenario setup chosen rocks. So we limited ourselves with our tools. Metaphor, 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 metaphor. I can't even unpack all of the different metaphors. So we had tools and we were using them, but now we know better that if we have better tools, we'll get better results. So we broke rocks for a while. And then we decided to go see what else, to explore the land and see what else there was. See, maybe we would break some more rocks, maybe we dig some more holes. We weren't sure, So we met this other guy who said, no, 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 they're under the tree roots, follow me. If you go away in the back on the tree line and you dig underneath the tree roots, they're right there. Okay. Okay. So we made a little attempt at some more digging. And, at this point in time, I mean, we have a pretty good stash. Again, there are some beautiful, beautiful diamonds that come out of there. And, some are very large in size, some are very perfect in grade. But we were kind of happy with our little stash. We felt like we showed up and accomplished something. So we went back down. We went back to Bill, our original teacher, and we were having conversation with him, and it's so funny. Ironically, now I'm in Herkimer, New York, in the Mohawk Valley, and he grew up 5 miles from where I grew up. So I said, "Where are you from?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm from Orange County, New York." I'm like, "No way." Right. So we narrowed it down. We had people in common and things in common. So here you are thinking that you're in the middle of this mine and this guy's been there for 28 days. And, I mean, how you couldn't even imagine that it was going to be a hometown connection. Crazy, crazy, crazy. But the bottom line is, right? Everything we do shows us something. It shows us something about human connection. It shows us something about who we are. It shows us something about, just general metaphors for how to live our lives, right? How many
I love it,
rocks do you have
Susan.
to break open before you find a diamond?
Well, and I love the fact that you were the openness, which is what we talk about, being open. Any book you read is going to always start off with, you have to be open. This might sound a little woo woo. This might sound a little bit like I'm uncomfortable with it. Universe, God, source, what is all these verbiages? And if you just pause, connect with your energy, what feels good to me, what feels comfortable, what can I dig a little bit more and uncover, and how open am I? You guys went in there, you were excited, but you were open to the process
Yeah, yeah, and
and
not
to ask
and
for
not
help.
rushed, not trying to rush to the finish line. If we had found one diamond, it would have been a success. I mean, we each found a small handful of diamonds, you know what I mean? And if we had found one, it would have felt successful. If we had found none, we would have learned what we needed to do in order to come back more successful. Because it's part of the process. And it's interesting. You have to connect with people, you have to make connections with the earth, connections with nature, but also connections with other people. I mean, there was a woman who told us the first time she came, she found zero. And that just motivated her to come back again, because she knew she was watching other people get stuff. She had to shift her preparation, you know, and fortunately enough, we were open enough to, want to have guidance or gain information. Sometimes we resist that because we don't want to appear as rookies. There's a fine line between doing something for the first time and being supported or unsupported because of your ego.
So you have to show your vulnerability.
Yeah, I guess you
If
do,
you're,
right?
yeah, if you are able to put your ego to the side and say, this is my first time, what do I do? Would you mind showing me what you are doing right now?
Mhm.
Instead of saying, well, I already know what I have to do, so I'm just going to go in my little corner and find my own, dig a hole
And try to
forever.
figure it out, right? And try to
Yeah.
figure it out, so
And so then you get discouraged
and
because
you're wasting
now,
time. You're wasting valuable time and you're also stealing. So here's the other piece, right? So this man willingly had been digging for 28 days. I mean, he was in the mother lode of earth, and he was willingly giving us his pay dirt. And we graciously accepted because stealing his joy of watching us, you know, experience this would have been terrible too. No, no, thanks. We'll dig our own.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, if you're offering, I'm graciously accepting.
Yeah, this is his
Graciously.
hard work. He already
Yes.
did a lot of the work,
The fruits,
28 days of work.
the fruits of his labor. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
let us in to experience the joy of his hard work. And we allowed it. And we allowed it. And the other thing that's really fascinating, Amaryllis, and I mean, like, these diamonds are 500 million years old.
Mm.
Huh, 500 million years old. And I have them in my hand. I have them in a jar in my kitchen window. Like, does that not put life in perspective? So you can go to the Mohawk Valley and you can dig and you can come out with treasures that are millions of years old that supersede any sort of imagination of our own timeline. And yet we get upset with ourselves if we don't do something, in the next 12 months. If we don't make something happen, if we don't force something to happen, if we don't,
Those
come on.
goals, when we set those goals, they're so dangerous because when we think the timeline that's the human timeline, not nature's timeline.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nature works on a total different timeline. It's not an hour, it's not seconds. Sometimes is months before one little thing happens and changes. I mean, tulips. We have to wait till Mother's Day to see these beautiful flowers come back.
Right.
I was watching a video about that, how people go to these locations where they're growing tulips and what they do to continue to get them having to come back and how
Yeah.
you have to plant them at the right time and so they come out before Mother's Day and then the frost if it gets cold. And I mean, nature is just keeps you on your toes because just when you think you're doing right, all of a sudden something changes and you just have to be able to, what
Adapt.
is your reaction and adapt.
What's your flexibility? What's your adaptability? And how do you respond?
Right.
Because if you're react is a knee jerk gut, boom. Poof. The response is, wait a minute. So what do I have control over here? What in this current situation, we show up at the rock place and we're standing there like, So we can only control what we put out, right? What are we asking for? What are what are we looking for? We're looking to be educated. We're looking to have a positive experience. And we're also looking to make connections. I mean, human connection is the single most important teacher because everybody we cross paths with, we have an opportunity to learn from. Now, I'd asked Bill 3 times where he was from, and he told me where he was from. My friend Claudia asked him where he grew up. That's when it all came out. I was like, what question are you asking?
Mm.
You know what I mean? But it came out at the right time. It's
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
it was so fascinating.
The
So
questions, and I know we're going through all the time. There's always change and all the time. I think one of the things that we discuss here and anywhere for those who are listening to us, seekers and trying to find the alignment of what's happening when we decided to be here, present human beings being in this moment. And the thing that and no matter how many books I read, they all go back to the same thing. You
right.
can't go too far to looking at the past. You have to just learn from your lessons there, and you can't go too far to the future because then you're not being present in the moment. this hour right now. You took time to listen to our podcast. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts, because that's time that you're choosing to listen to us and maybe get a little grain of what you needed to hear at that moment. It's the same thing as when you choose to go for a walk
Yeah.
and see a neighbor and say hello. You might be have seen this person for years and
Right.
then discover something that you have in common at that moment.
Or you choose to pull a book off your shelf that's been sitting there
Mm.
for 5 years that you haven't read, and it's talking about exactly what it is that you needed to hear. Or you know, pick up the phone and you call an old friend just to make that connection, that
And
warm.
you do that bucket list because it's what we were doing, you know, and don't judge yourself for saying, oh, this bucket list took me 20 years to get to do it. What do I want to do today that I can control and do, that's at me alcance, like that I can reach,
Yes,
so
that's
that I can,
attainable,
yeah.
that's manageable, that's
And then if it's not manageable right now, then let me keep putting it there. It's going to manifest. But right now, what can I do so that when
what
I'm
little
not
piece of
regretting?
it? Yeah, what little piece of it can I do that's putting me in the direction or that's working me towards that? You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
we're it's baby steps. I
And
mean,
guys, sometimes we make it so complicated. I mean, for me right now, it has been planting. I'm learning to have a green thumb. And I'm taking the time. I mean, we live in a generation now where there are so many videos. Now I have like crazy feeds of people telling me how to plant orchids and what to do. And, you know, just
and
I'm
you
very
listen to all
visual.
of them, and
And
then you
yeah,
do, and so the thing about information and you know, whether it's human connection or whether it's, you know, YouTube connection or whether you're listening to our podcast, whatever it is, but the thing about information is be open, back to open, to all of it, and then choose what aspects of it feel the most right for you right now. So again, in our conversations with these rock hunters, right? If they gave us more than we needed, we didn't have to use all of the information that they gave us. It's like baby steps. It's one at a time. And I keep saying that, but like, you know, you crawl first, you roll over first, you know, you crawl, then you walk, then you run, then you know, it's like, don't get to the point where you feel like I'm never going to be able to run.
mm,
So why bother crawling?
oh my God, we forget. Look at that newborn baby who just was
Yes.
waiting, just being depending on someone else, but also at the same time just breathing and being in the moment.
Yes. Yes. And setting, you know, having the goals, but not setting the expectation to the outcome. Again, I had no idea what this little field trip was going to bring me, you know, and I didn't even know, I mean, forgive me, but like, you know, I had no idea the history of the diamonds, the history of the Mohawk Native Americans. You know, they were the gemstone, you know, like their thing was gemstones. And you know, but like, you don't know that until you cross paths with someone who can share that with you, and you just listen with an open mind and you remember what it is that you need to know to take with you to move forward. So many different metaphors. I mean, you know, and you can have these kinds of experiences walking down the street of Manhattan by
Mhm.
simply observing, you know, the homeless man feeding the birds, or observing the street vendor who's feeding the people, or observing the bus driver, you know, who's managing, or the police officer who's watching. Like, you don't have to, you know, nature doesn't necessarily mean, you know, the middle of nowhere. These things are all happening everywhere. Our awareness is the key. Am I aware enough of what I need to get where I'd like to be, or to get what's going to grow me? Planting, digging, it's all growing us. You
That's
know,
it,
I'm
guys.
destroying something to find something more beautiful, and you
Oh
are
my God.
planting something to create something more beautiful. It's neither a right or wrong, right? Sometimes we have to destroy things or release things or let go of things, stories in our head,
Mm.
toxic relationships, people that no longer serve us, material goods that are meaningless, collecting dust. Like sometimes we have to release things or destroy things to
Yeah.
create things. And sometimes we have to nurture things or develop things in order to create things. It's like we can't be so linear that we're not open in our awareness. Now we get to choose, once we're open in our awareness, we get to choose what it is that we want to attach to believe, to hold on to cultivate, to nurture, to grow, to destroy, to break open, to break through. We get to pick all that.
Yes, we do. Baby steps. I mean, sometimes it just feels, you just said that the part of destroying, I had this beautiful plant that has vines and all of this, and I looked it up, and you have to give it kind of like a haircut, and I ripped it all up and I cut it, and came back to just this little bush, and I thought, okay, I'm going to follow this through, and then I've learned how I could, I can't say this word,
Prune it. Oh,
prune them,
propagate it.
but
Propagate
propagate
it.
it,
Mhm.
which, and so I got little jars of all kinds of different sizes and water and put them in, and then you can see the roots growing, and then you can replant those. And then all of a sudden now you have more plants from the cutting.
Yes. Yes. From
And now
destroying
this,
something, you're creating something else.
yes, and out of this thing that was so big and growing, but had all these vines growing with no leaves in them, has now surfaced because it needed the energy. It was putting its energy in the wrong spots. And
That's
that's the
right.
beautiful thing that I'm also learning about plants, how amazing they preserve the water, preserve the energy. They need light, they need water, they need soil. And then
Oh, sounds
they
familiar.
just, when
Who
you cut
doesn't?
it, so when you stop and you center yourself and you go back to your breath, take the pause and say, this has been sitting here, it's collecting dust. I should gift it. Let me give that energy to somebody else that might want it or need it,
Yeah.
or I'm going to sell it,
Or the
or
thrift
this and that.
store and someone can find it. Mhm.
And becomes their treasure. And now you make space for something new to come through.
Yes. Yes.
So,
So take a field trip.
yeah.
I wish I brought my diamonds with me. I could show you, but anyway,
They're on your Instagram page. So those that follow you will be
they
able to
are on
see
my
it. They're
mindful
beautiful.
yogi underscore NY. Yeah, they're on my Instagram page. But yeah, yeah.
Thank you,
It's a
Susan, for your
beautiful
time.
thing. The experience, the idea of what you're going for, and then what happens, you never know. Bill, the hometown guy, who was our teacher, whatever, whatever. So I love it. Life will guide you. Stay open, listen, notice, right? And you will be guided. Ah, thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
So fun. So fun. Have a great one.